Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss one likely reason for the Conservatives getting their strategies so badly wrong so often in recent years. And we can put some of it down to the strategic incompetence of the series of weak leaders that the Conservatives have had, but that doesn't explain it well enough. Usually, politicians compensate for their own lack of strategic thinking with more expert advice. It's the advice which has been poor as well. So what is it that changed the Conservatives from valuing expert advice? To a large extent, it was their Brexit ideology, as I shall try to explain. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So in order to form a robust policy, you need experts and you need critique. To refuse to utilise critical experts is to allow the policy to go badly wrong. You end up with groupthink, which means that early opportunities to identify weakness in a policy are lost and you end up with a weak policy. You then launch the policy, it goes badly wrong, and you not only look incompetent, but you fail to even meet your own objectives. And we can see this in any number of Conservative policies right now. Asylum is one of the largest that's not directly related to Brexit. They are pursuing very poor policies which are not even delivering what they want to achieve. It's going so badly that it's going to cost them seats in an election that they are already nailed on for losing. They don't want to lose the election, so why do they keep pursuing these unpopular policies? It's because they don't actually realise how unpopular they're going to be, because they are not inviting advice from people who would tell them. When we look at Conservative policy over the past few years, not just on asylum, you can focus on the repulsive nature of some of it, but what's remarkable is just how weak it is. I've said a few times, the Tories can't even do evil right these days. I often point at the political naivety of senior members of the government, but another huge part of the puzzle surely has to be this attitude of preventing experts being involved in policy making just because they are critical of your politics. Over the past few years, I've seen lots of reports of experts who in the past have been formally called upon by the government of both stripes to advise them on policy. And all of a sudden, they're now being rejected from those discussions. No, we don't want those involved. They don't like Brexit. You know, we've seen in the Tory media attacks on anyone involved in the civil service for being Remainers. They insist that Brexit is going badly because of Remainer officials, the blob. But this is nonsense. Ministers decide policy. Ministers always decide policy. If a minister is receiving advice from someone who speaks out against Brexit publicly, that minister doesn't have to do what they say, but they should still listen. In order to find practical solutions, trades unions listen to business leaders and vice versa. It's how you rigorously test proposals and come up with something that just works. And I was reminded of this change in attitude along Brexit lines by yet another opinion piece in The Observer yesterday from another expert who's finding himself being resisted. This one's not actually being kicked out of the circle, so to speak, but being resisted by some Conservatives because of, the way he thinks. The problem with freezing people like this out of the policy discussions, it's not just that you're missing out on the sort of robust criticism that can only really come from someone who's not fully on board with your political ideas. Actually, political opponents make the best, critical experts for your policies. But there's a deeper problem as well. So the bottom line is that Brexit in general was a bad idea. And a hard Brexit was utterly ludicrous. There is not a single leader of any part of our economy who is standing up and saying, this has been good for the UK. They're all saying the opposite. Even the ones who thought it might be good for the UK before it happened are now saying it's been bad for our industry. It is not something that in a sane country would even be a matter for debate. Brexit is terrible. And experts in all fields know that and are saying that. So if you refuse to engage with experts who believe that Brexit is bad, well, it means you're not actually engaging with any experts at all, are you? If the overriding essential quality of any advisor on any policy at any level is that they must vocally support Brexit, then you will only get yes men advising you. You get groupthink. You get obvious flaws in policies covered up. No one points them out. so that when you launch the policy, all goes badly wrong. You know, sometimes you can think that because these policies end up handing over large sums of money to right-wing political donors, that actually it's all part of the plan. It's not. Yes, whatever policy they implement is always going to end up making some Tory rich, but they still want the policies to achieve their primary aims. They don't actually want trade to fail, or for asylum to be a problem, or for businesses to go bust, or for energy prices to stifle economic growth. They don't want any of these things. And yet their policies so predictably make these things happen that it's easy to assume that it must be deliberate. But in reality, it's just because politicians don't actually need to know how anything works. Some politicians are actually an expert in something, but not necessarily the department they're working in. But they'll be an expert in something. But many of them are not, because they don't need to be. They become ministers and in charge of policy by winning a series of popularity contests. That's it. Very few of them, even the well-intentioned ministers, could actually produce a policy on anything, not with a workable plan. So they need experts to advise them on how to turn their political aims into a workable plan, and they shouldn't be worried about their politics. The minister decides at the end of the day. It's the minister who decides what goes ahead. Bringing in anti-Brexit advisors doesn't mean you end up with an anti-Brexit policy. It just means you will get to listen to expert advice about the consequences of the current plan and how you could make it better and still achieve your political aims. And yes, some experts won't work with their political opponents in government. There will be some experts who will refuse to work with a Tory minister. And there will be some people on the right who would refuse to work with a Labour minister. Okay, you obviously can't get their advice because they are withholding it. But there are lots of experts who have political views who will nonetheless work with any government because it's the pragmatic way to make the best of things. And this article in the Observer talks about the dangers of insisting that officials don't engage with people critical of government policy. As the author notes, it means putting officials in an echo chamber. And as I say, it is so stupid. Political opponents are no threats to government. Officials do not decide policy, and certainly ad hoc advisors do not. They're just presenting their views and possible solutions to the relevant minister. It's then up to that minister which they go ahead with. It is possible that a blinkered minister gets the best advice and still goes ahead with a weak policy which will fall flat on its face when implemented, because they ignored the experts, as they are free to do. Taking advice doesn't compel you to act on it, but it does at least give you the chance to consider the weaknesses in your intended plan and to make it stronger. That the Conservatives have now spent years freezing experts out of their decision making should mean that we cannot be surprised that they are getting every strategy wrong. It started with freezing out those who attack Brexit. We won't talk to anyone who attacks Brexit. Then it's progressed to freezing out those who've ever criticised Tory government policy. Oh, they liked a tweet that was uncomplimentary 3 years ago. And it's ironic that they're mixing up the criteria for advisors and candidates, isn't it? So they allow candidates who will openly attack Conservative policies, as the deputy chair of the party has done so on numerous occasions, including last week. Those are the people they should be saying, well, hang on, if they're really critical of our party, should we maybe not make them MPs for our party? And yet they freeze out experts who do so, even though they don't represent the party at all. Their views do not reflect on the party. It's absolute madness. And what's more, it's self-defeating madness. It means they're going to keep making the wrong decisions because instead of getting the best advisors, they're instead choosing those who won't challenge them. But the best advisors are those who will challenge you. It's how you get stronger. And one more reason to add to the pile of reasons why the Tories will not win the next election. There's a lot of people going, oh, Phil, how can you be so sure? Yeah, it's looking good at the moment, but it could all fall apart, couldn't it? No, for so many reasons. And this is another one of them. The Tories are not getting expert advice on anything. As understandably cautious as the Labour Party is of blowing it even now, the Tories are just getting everything wrong. Frankly, if they didn't have the media backing them, I'm not sure they'd win any seats at all with their current behaviour. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.